Hello, you negligent nobodies. I am James. You know that. You should. Maybe. I don't know. You're negligent, so I don't know. I'm negligent as well. That's why I'm doing this video this week for my TGRS. Life has come up. That is really the long and short of it. I am working on other projects, and that's actually what I want to discuss today. I am writing a book. I have been for about 15 years at this point. Basically since I was a little kid. I'm really going through the push to actually finish it. And I want to read what I have so far. The audio quality will change because I'm going to go over to my actual computer setup. But, yeah, that's it. I'm going to read the first chapter and we'll go from there. That'll be my video for the day. Alright, now that the video portion is over, hello, you negligent nobodies. We're going to be starting my book. I don't know how best to put it. The book is called Wielders of the Flames, The Death of the World Tree. Actually, I have a little title page. Yep, Book 1, Death of the World Tree by me, James Lindegren. Yeah. Alright. Prologue. The fires were rising around him, and Jack could feel... No. I'm not gonna edit this. The fires were rising around him, and Zack couldn't feel their heat. Zack could feel their heat. Oh, I should have practiced this. He hadn't felt their heat in years, not since he couldn't remember their name. His compatriot, his best friend. Zack only knew that he had to stop his enemy no matter what, because he knew that his life counted on it. No, not just his life, everyone's lives. His opponent wore black armor, revealing little about his true nature, but Zack knew. Zack knew that this was the force of evil that he had to rid from the world. Zack picked up his sword, the crimson blade curved in a crescent moon shape. The flames surrounding him flickered their light against the blade and into his eyes. Memories flooded to the surface of all the people that had been hurt, those who had become like his family over the years. With time, he had known that he had loved each and every one of them in their own way, even if they had been less than savory to him on more than one occasion. Somehow that made Zack trust them even more, because despite everything, they were still there and had his back. His armor was heavy. He normally didn't wear any, but this was a special occasion. Sometimes you had to dress up because you had known that this could very well be the day that you will die. With determination in his heart that he truly didn't feel, Zack attacked his opponent, who wielded a staff of pure darkness. A strike with his sword made Zack's arm shake and let go of the blade. And with a strike from above with the staff, Zack could feel his soul disconnect from his body and drift away into the beyond. Yeah, there's formatting issues, it's fine. And it is on screen, so you can read it along with me, or you can just ignore me and read it. Chapter 1. The storm raged outside, lightning arcing through the air, striking the ground, causing pests of the field to scurry away in terror. They shouldn't have been awake by now, but in a storm, what kind of animal can truly sleep? The storm had circled this town for years, the town of Ville de Voyage. Some days were worse than others, being nothing more than a light drizzle, sometimes with some much-needed sunlight peeking through the layer of clouds on the better days. And on the worst days, there were lockdowns for the safety of the public. The tenants of the town were used to the storm, not paying much mind to it most of the time. And this even goes for sleep. The storm never rests, but the townsfolk do, and peacefully as well. Though there is one in the town who sleeps fitfully, though it has nothing to do with the storm. Zack is tossing and turning in his bed on the east side of town, just as he seems to every single night. His sheets are soaked with cold sweat, and his dark curly hair was sparkling in the light from the LCD clock screen and the flashes of lightning from outside. He snorts into sleep and then he jerks awake, the snort having given himself the final push to finally escape his dream. He puts his head in his hands, wiping away the sweat and tears from his face. His hands trembled slightly, and he pulled a rag from his cluttered bedside table and wiped it through his hair to remove the excess sweat from his head. His throat was raw and dry, almost as if he had been screaming all night. But he knew that he hadn't. He was just thirsty. He glanced at the screen of his alarm clock, and the display read that it was 15 minutes until 3 a.m. Still too early to justify staying awake, but too late for him to be able to get a sufficient amount of sleep for his day at school tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. Today. He groaned and pulled himself up and sat on the edge of his bed. He clicked the bedside lamp on and illuminated the room in the warm light of the LED bulb, far more energy efficient than the CFL bulbs that he had practically grown up using. On his dark wooden bedside table, there was a myriad of pens and notebooks, his futile attempts at trying to recollect and jot down his relentless night terrors. Alongside them was a tall glass of several-day-old water, the cup giving off a musty smell that Zach often associated with bodies of water outside, like creeks and lakes, though the constant storm tended to keep the area smelling fresh, a silver lining. The lamp was thin with only a power outlet on the base of it, and the brass-colored coating around the switch was wearing down with many years of use. After giving the cup of water a tentative sniff, he shakes his head in disgust, vows like he normally does to be better about replacing the water cup every day like he always says he will, and he stands up. Zach stretches and his back pops multiple times in a satisfying way. His room was far more Spartan than his nightstand would have suggested. He had no pictures on the pale yellow walls, mostly due to not having many memories to put there. The only piece of decoration on the wall was a poster for a book that he had liked as a kid and had begged his mom for. The dresser was large, way too large for the amount of clothing it stored. Out of the 6 drawers, 1 was full of undergarments, 2 had various t-shirts, and the 4th had several pairs of jeans, and one pair of bright red pajama pants that he had become attached to over the few years he had had them. The remaining drawers had some more notebooks and a few trinkets he had kept for the longest time, since he didn't go anywhere now that he had gotten older. This was partly due to his mother. Zach had never known his father, as he had passed away long before Zach could even remember him, and early on his mother did her best to keep the pain inside. But one day, around the time Zach had turned 12, about 4 years ago, she had turned cold towards him. Perhaps he had gotten old enough to remind her of his late father, and that dug up the pain. Perhaps because she traveled so much for work, there was no real time for her to show him any affection. And perhaps Zach wasn't a worthy enough son. This thought brought a tear to his eye, as it always did. The fear of not being a good enough son to his mother who had tried to give him a decent life all by herself. He wiped the tear away, and as soon as he had touched his hand to the doorknob to go downstairs, there was a loud clap of thunder that shook the very foundation of the house, and the power died. He knew this wouldn't work, but Zach flipped the light switch by the door off and on repeatedly. Of course. He was familiar enough with the house to be able to walk down to the kitchen with little issue, but he didn't like the idea of it. He had no issues with the darkness, but there was one stair on the way down that he had difficulties with even when there was a light to see with. With a creak, the door opened and Zach went through it, walking towards the staircase. He held his hand around where the railing should be, and once he felt it, he grabbed onto it. Slowly he stepped down, and like clockwork, his foot slipped off of the stair and he slid down the stairs on his back, bruising his spine in multiple spots. He only sat at the foot of the stairs for a moment, feeling the new marks on his back throb along with his heartbeat. The kitchen now felt like it was a mile away.
but he still managed to stand up and walk his way there. Pulling a clean glass from the upper cabinet, Zach filled the glass with cool tap water. He brought it to his mouth and drank greedily. The taste was unpleasant to him, like the tap water here always was. Metals and dirty flavors permeated the water, and there was a hint of algae in the water like always. He knew that the water wasn't unsafe to drink, but it was still unpleasant to him, though his dry mouth and throat would disagree. 2 glasses of water down, and he felt he was satiated well enough. He propped himself against the sink on his arms and looked out the window at the storm. Zach could see the trees whipping violently in the wind as each thunderbolt arced across the sky. The rain was pelting the window in a torrent of droplets. The house was really sturdy, the wind barely making a creak from the support structure. The kitchen was almost as barren as his bedroom was, the laminate flooring and the pattern of gray wood. The countertops were a dark brown, a very confusing color for something that would have had food on it. The window had flaking white paint around it, and there was a small leak dripping into a cup of water that Zach poured out. The kitchen was tidy, if dusty. His mother hadn't cooked in several years, and Zach was only really versed in using the microwave for frozen meals. This is his life, as unappealing as it was. Being 16, it was about as much as he could ask for right now. As much as he might love his mother, he knew that getting away from her was the best thing for him. Sometimes he considered running away, but he couldn't get the urge to do it. The thought of just leaving was hard enough for him. There was a lull in the storm, and Zach looked out the window. His breath fogged up the glass, making it hard to see. But it almost looked as though there was a cyclone of clouds forming, and at the center was a multicolored ball of light. That was impossible. Even with the turbulent weather, tornadoes 100 miles away from Ville de Voyage were incredibly rare. As for the light, Zach just assumed that he was hallucinating, or perhaps he was still sleeping and the now dull throbbing in his back was just a byproduct of a particularly vivid dream, and he will forget all about it the morning after waking. Lightning arced around the ball of light, and some struck the ball, but nothing seemed to happen. A heartbeat later, ferociously red lightning came lashing out of the orb, striking up into the sky and piercing the ground, and wherever it struck the ground, the nearby area burst into white and blue flames. Zach could almost feel the intense heat of the flames, and this was confirmed by the nearby rain boiling away as the droplets approached. Zach panicked, and he knew he should try to find shelter, but the thought that followed was, what if the house caught fire in the same way? Oh, there's a little typo here I'm going to fix. Question mark. There we go. Nope, there we go. That's fine. He could potentially be trapped inside the burning house, and with how hot the fires were, he knew he wouldn't last for more than a minute or so in the intense heat. He had no idea what to do, his legs wouldn't move. And in a flash of red light, he could feel intense heat pouring into his body. The lightning was arcing through a now molten hole in the glass, and Zach felt only agony. He found himself blown away from the sink, and he didn't even realize he had hit the wall so hard, he had left a giant hole in the drywall. It felt like boiling hot metal was now coursing through his veins. The lightning finally stopped, the arcs from the orb had ceased. Though it felt like an eternity to Zach, the lightning only flowed into his body for a few seconds, still far longer than typical lightning strikes. His shirt was smoldering and tattered, and Zach felt his chest to feel for any injuries, but his chest was now numb to his fingers. But with the heat now embracing his hand, he knew that he must be on fire, even if he couldn't see any. The glass in the window was still hot, and as the cold rain droplets splattered against it, small cracks began to appear from the thermal shock. Zach stood up slowly and staggered forward. The fires outside had begun to die out, and the cyclone of clouds had vanished. Zach could only make out the faint image of the orb in the distance, before it finally vanished from his sight. He began to cry, begging that this was a dream and that didn't actually happen, his body still burning inside. His legs gave out and his head hit the floor beneath him and his vision turned black, falling into nothingness. So yeah, that's chapter 1. Obviously subject to change. This is technically the first draft. I'm only about 8 chapters into it with this current go through, but it's more detailed than it's ever been, more words. You can't see the word count right now, but I'm at 13,000 words on this master. Probably closer to 20,000 with chapters 7 and 8. I have those written, they're just not in the master document yet, which is what this is. So yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do this a whole lot because I don't want to show too much of the book. But let me know what you think, and I mean, hey, if anyone knows any agents or anything, send this their way. Hopefully they'll ignore the terrible speech. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Consider this an apology for missing the TGRS for this week. And next week, Terrell will have something, and we will see you all then.